Discovered, my daughter-in-law's shocking outburst at dinner leads to an amazing transformation. Greg Thompson stood at the foot of the long oak table, filled with dishes arranged like artifacts of a bygone era. The echoes of family history swirled around him, yet an unsettling tension hung heavy in the air. As a 47-year-old high school history teacher, he prided himself on instilling the values of family and tradition within the walls of their ancestral farmhouse. Every Sunday without fail, it was his duty to ensure this gathering felt like a sacred rite, a ritual bridging past and present. But today was different. Today, Lisa would throw a wrench in their family dynamics just as she had every time the subject of her ambitions surfaced. As Greg sliced into the roast, the familiar warm scent filled the room but failed to soothe the prickling anxiety creeping up his spine. He glanced at Lisa, his daughter-in-law, who wore a look of determined defiance. She had always felt suffocated by the weight of familial expectations, but today, Greg could sense something darker boiling underneath her composed exterior. She wanted change, he could feel it, and yet, he feared the implications. What would this mean for family loyalty? Would it unravel the fabric that held them together? "Greg, I need to talk to everyone," Lisa declared, her voice cutting through the chatter like a chilled knife. Greg's stomach tightened. This was it. "I'm enrolling in graduate school." The room went silent. Greg's heart raced as thoughts collided within his mind. Family comes first. It was a mantra stamped into his being, and he wanted to uphold it. But standing in the way was Lisa, challenging him on ground he felt was his to defend. "Now wait a minute, Lisa. We've got a family to raise. Isn't that enough? Enough?" She shot back, her voice rising, raw and jagged. "I feel like I'm drowning in expectations here. I love the family, but I am more than just a mother and a wife." The chaos erupted as family members threw in their opinions, but all Greg could focus on was his daughter-in-law's anguish. He had always thought of himself as a protector of tradition, but now he questioned if his values were too rigid. Was he stunting the spirit he believed he was nurturing? The roast grew cold as everyone absorbed the words hanging heavily in the room. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Silence swallowed the room, but the lingering emotions echoed louder than any words could. Greg's chest tightened further as he faced Lisa. This wasn't merely about her career, it was about identity, ambition, her fight to be seen as an individual outside of familial roles, and he, the guardian of family traditions, was the obstacle. The tension curdled into despair, and while they sat in opposite mental corners, the scream of realization landed heavily on Greg's conscience. He stared down at his plate, wrestling with wave after wave of shame. Just when he thought words might cut through the rising fog, the piercing tone of a phone broke the silence. An unexpected scholarship opportunity local, right in front of him. They might have a chance to draw their dreams from the depths of tense familial waters. Lisa's hopeful glance cut through his fog. His chest tightened as he contemplated. Could they unite, or would tradition suffocate their dreams? But even as possibilities glimmered in the air, old family dynamics began to clash again, and with each passing moment, unresolved tensions spiraled deeper. This dinner wasn't merely a battle of ambitions, it was a defining moment. What glory awaited? If Greg could allow for personal desires to flourish alongside family? As Lisa took a step closer, fraught with the weight of expectation, and he stared into her determined eyes, he suddenly felt an undercurrent of dread mixed with hope. Would they carve out a new path together if they could navigate through the chaos alive? Greg's heart thudded in his chest as he wrestled with the implications of Lisa's declaration. The air felt stifling. Memories of family dinners past replayed in rapid succession in his mind, the laughter, the shared stories, the rituals he'd meticulously crafted for their gatherings. Each detail mattered to him, they were threads in a tapestry he believed defined their family. But now, that very tapestry was fraying, and he was left holding the strands, unsure how to weave them back together. Lisa, you can't just decide all of this without considering, he began, his voice strained. Without considering what, Greg? She interrupted, the fire in her eyes intensifying. Without considering the traditions that have kept this family together? Or perhaps the fear of losing what we've built if I start to stand on my own 2 feet? The room shifted on its axis, everyone's attention locked on their confrontation. In that moment, Greg felt exposed. He questioned not just Lisa's ambitions, but his own role within this family. Was he a curator of legacy or merely a prison guard of expectations? Was fighting for family unity an act of love or an act of selfishness? The growing discomfort gnawed at him. I just want to protect our family, he finally said, his voice softening. I'm afraid of what this will mean. Lisa's expression shifted, confusion laced with determination. But what if protecting this family means allowing us to grow? Maybe we're supposed to evolve, not just hold on tight. I need this, Greg. I need to know who I am beyond being a wife or a mother. The words hit him like a cold splash of water, awakening something deep within. She was right, even if it stung to admit it. He watched her, this vibrant woman standing before him, a new landscape emerging in her eyes, a blend of strength and vulnerability. Could he reconcile this awakening with the values he held dear? The tension hung thick, coiling around his thoughts. Greg realized he had been so caught up in tradition that he had neglected his own growth, too. Was he, the history teacher, also stuck in a moment frozen in time? Each layer of expectation that stifled Lisa also quietly shackled him. Perhaps it was he who should explore possibilities, just as she dared to do. As dinner continued awkwardly around them, Greg felt a subtle shift within himself. An unfamiliar sense of empowerment sparked, an instinctive desire to support Lisa's aspirations. Could a balance exist? Celebrating tradition while paving new avenues of identity? He contemplated his own dwindling dreams, buried beneath the weight of providing and protecting. Maybe, Greg hesitated, words slowly taking shape, maybe we can find a way to make this work for all of us. Lisa's eyes softened, revealing a glimmer of hope. You mean that? Greg nodded, filled with earnest intention. They could forge a new path, a fusion of tradition and personal ambition, one that honored the collective while nurturing individual aspirations. But even as the thought settled, another worry prickled at the edges of his consciousness. How would the rest of the family react? Would they embrace this shift or push back harder against perceived transgressions against long-held values? The clock ticked ominously in the background as Greg processed these swirling emotions. The room still felt tense, but amongst the edges of doubt and fear lay an opportunity for profound change, not just for Lisa, but for himself, as well. Maybe I need to do something for myself too, he whispered, hardly able to accept the truth he spoke. The light of possibility flickered in the dark corners of his mind, teasing a vision of what lay ahead. Would he have the courage to pursue that path? And would it stand the test of tradition? The next chapter of their lives waited impatiently in the wings, and as Lisa reached out to him, an unspoken determination surged between them. The moment of truth loomed closer, a crossroad shimmering in the distance. What choices would they make now that they dared to dream differently? The air thickened as the confrontation hung in the frail space between them. Greg's heart raced faster, not just from the tumult of the moment, but from the realization that a shift was upon them, one that required boldness from both him and Lisa. He sensed the first currents of change winding through the fabric of their family, a fabric woven with expectations and unyielding roles. There was so much at stake, yet beneath that pressure lay the spark of something new, a catalyst for growth. Maybe we can find a way to make this work for all of us, he had said, but the question that lingered revolved around what work truly meant. Did it mean negotiating compromises, or did it involve a deeper introspection? Greg needed to face not just the dynamics of their family, but the essence of who he had become. With the weight of tradition bearing down on his shoulders, how could he step away from being merely the steward of his family's past? Later that evening, as the dim light of the dining room stressed the patterns of the tablecloth, Greg found himself recovering from the intensity of the confrontation. He excused himself, seeking refuge in the solitude of his study. It was there, amidst the aged books and memorabilia of yesteryears, that Greg's mind began to churn with possibilities. As he sat down, the walls of his sanctuary felt both familiar and constricting. Every item in the room told a story that contributed to a carefully crafted identity. Yet, in the stillness, Greg recognized a dissonance, a deep yearning that he had buried. He was so engrossed in preserving the legacy of his family that he had neglected to consider his own aspirations. What dreams flickered in the shadows of his daily responsibilities? Lost in thought, he picked up a leather-bound journal filled with notes from his teaching days. It was here that he felt a forgotten sense of purpose. Reflecting on his passion for history, he recalled the lessons he loved to convey, stories of change, of rebellion, of the courageous figures throughout time who had dared to question the norms. Returning to the figure of Lisa, her plea echoing in his mind, he felt invigorated by the idea that evolution was more than an individual journey, it was a mutual awakening. To support her as she stepped away from being defined solely by her roles, he needed to model that very courage. What did it mean to truly evolve? Greg opened the journal and began to sketch ideas, not merely theoretical lessons for his students but his own plans for growth. What if he started pursuing that long-held curiosity about writing? He recalled a specific dream of authoring a book that documented the evolution of modern family dynamics through historical references, melding his two worlds together. The thought bubble popped in his mind: could this project serve as both an outlet and a tool for shared experiences with Lisa? After all, both of them stood on the cusp of personal discoveries. As their individual aspirations unfolded, perhaps they could write a new chapter for their family, challenging the boundaries of expectation while fostering unity. With newfound resolve, Greg envisioned conversations with Lisa that extended beyond the current struggle. They could transform their familial narrative, fusing the old with the new and creating a space where individual voices strengthened their collective identity. But an unsettling doubt quickly surfaced: what if this path proved too daunting for Lisa? What if she faltered along the way, influenced by the very traditions he had defended? The idea of their journey toward personal and shared growth presented a precarious balance that he would need to navigate with care and empathy. The clock continued to tick, and with each passing second, Greg felt the weight of impending decisions like a pressing storm close on the horizon. It was time to embrace vulnerability and extend an invitation to Lisa that would challenge them both. As he closed the journal, he steeled himself for the conversation to come, one that could redefine not just their relationship, but their identities. The pivotal moment awaited, a crossroads where courage would either lead them into the unknown or tether them back to the familiar. But amid these threads of thought, one pressing question lingered: how would they confront their fears and step into this new light together? The morning light streamed through the kitchen window, casting soft shadows across the table where the remnants of breakfast lay scattered. Greg's heart was a cacophony of uncertainty, a tumultuous symphony that resonated as he mentally prepared for his conversation with Lisa. The clock ticked ominously, each strike a reminder of the approaching moment of truth. Yet amidst the nerves, his resolve solidified. He understood that transformation could not occur without the discomfort of confrontation. In those quiet seconds before Lisa arrived, he mentally rehearsed the opening words, striving for an authenticity that conveyed the weight of his intentions. He would speak not just about personal aspirations, but about their shared journey, the entwined fates shaped by the past yet yearning to embrace the future. This conversation was to be a blend of vulnerability and vision, one that could unravel the tightly held narratives pinning them down. When Lisa entered, stirring the air with her warmth, she hardly glanced up before beginning her ritual of brewing coffee. He could read the day's heaviness written on her face, and it dawned on him how much she carried, perhaps more than he ever acknowledged. She was in her own struggle, eager for change yet apprehensive of the ramifications of stepping outside her familiar frame. "Can we talk?" he finally asked, his voice breaking the silence like a pebble tossed into a still pond. Lisa turned her gaze. A mixture of curiosity and trepidation flickered in her eyes. "Sure. What's up?" "About what happened last night. I think there's more to discuss than just the surface conflict." She nodded slowly, setting down the coffee pot, her posture tightening. He could sense the walls closing in around her. He needed to proceed carefully. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," Greg continued, his pulse quickening yet maintaining composure, "about our family and how I've been stuck in this role, this protector of tradition. But I realize I feel that there's a weight to that which restricts us both. What if we started to shape our family's narrative differently? Lisa's brow furrowed, confusion laced with interest. What do you mean? I want to write a book, he said, the words pouring forth, but not just about history, it's about us, about our lives, about evolving from the roles that have defined us. It's about embracing our individual dreams while also redefining our place in this family. A long pause followed, thick and suffocating. Lisa crossed her arms, her expression caught between disbelief and contemplation. He feared he had miscalculated, but he pressed on, daring to peel back layers. I want you to join me, he blurted, this wouldn't be just my journey, but ours. We can collaborate, shape our stories, challenge the norms. I don't want to just preserve what has always been, I want to explore who we can become. For a moment, silence expanded like a balloon, and Greg watched the emotions flickering across Lisa's face: doubt, hope, fear, and an unmistakable spark of possibility. I don't know, Greg, she hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. What if we fail? What if it's too much? Then we fail together, he replied, feeling a dangerous confidence swell within him. But isn't it better to try and grow, than to linger in the shadow of what we used to be? Lisa glanced out the window, her mind clearly racing. Greg knew the fear of failure was daunting, but he also recognized that embracing vulnerability could be a bond that tied them closer. As she took a deep breath, readying herself to respond, Greg's pulse raced anew. The ground beneath them shifted, a subtle tremor heralding the changes they both needed. Would they dare to break free from their inherited roles and embrace the chaos of a new narrative together? The moment hung delicately, a pivotal choice balancing on the edge of a knife. In that pause, he sensed her internal struggle. Was she ready to step into this light? Greg, she began, but the words hung, pregnant with possibility, swirling in the air like leaves caught in a sudden wind. What followed could alter everything. Would they forge ahead or retreat to the safety of their past identities? The answer lingered just out of reach, a whisper beneath the noise. The air felt electric as Greg watched Lisa, a storm brewing behind her eyes, emotion building like thunderclouds on the horizon. He could sense the weight of her decision, the gravity of their conversation pressing down on them both. Would she choose the known comforts of their former lives, or step bravely into the uncertain future he was offering? Greg, she finally managed, her voice trembling on the verge of revelation. He leaned in, desperate to know what lay behind that hesitation. I think I want to try, she said, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke. But how do we even begin? A rush of excitement coursed through him, mingling with a deeper, quiet resolve in the pit of his stomach. Here was the gateway they needed, a commitment to explore the depths of their shared potential. We start by mapping out our stories, each of us. We dig into our histories, the things we've shied away from. There's strength in vulnerability, Lisa. We can bring forth those shadows and translate them into something powerful. Lisa's brow furrowed, but her eyes glimmered with curiosity. What if we unearth something we can't handle? Then we handle it together, he asserted firmly. We lift each other, support one another. This won't just be about the writing. It'll be about understanding ourselves, about facing fears of failure and rejection, and perhaps even embracing them. He sensed her processing the implications, her internal dialogue resting with the thrill of the unknown. What if no one reads it? What if it flops? It won't matter if we write it for ourselves first. This is about reclaiming our narrative and stepping out from the shadows of expectations. If we stay true to that, it can't flop. She inhaled deeply, her shoulders lowering, the tension begin to dissipate. Okay, so we write our stories. But do we share them? The question lingered in the air as both an invitation and a challenge. Only if we're ready, Greg replied, an awareness settling in. This was no longer merely about a book, it was a deliberate step toward redefining who they were as a couple, as parents, as individuals. All right, Lisa said, a spark igniting in her tone. Let us do this. But we need structure. I'll need deadlines or I might get lost in my own thoughts. Right. Let us set up a timeline, and perhaps we should meet regularly to discuss our progress. We can provide feedback, hold each other accountable, he suggested, heart racing with enthusiasm. Creating a plan felt empowering, a tangible manifestation of their intentions. Over the following days, they created outlines filled with hopes, fears, and dreams, plotlines woven together by shared creativity. Each session transformed into a sanctuary for the burgeoning unspoken thoughts they had kept at bay. Yet, amidst the blossoming collaboration, Greg felt the creeping shadows of doubt. Was their newfound path sturdy enough to withstand the pressures of the outside world? His mind spiraled with the what-ifs. But even still, Lisa's laughter and her light-hearted jabs during their writing sessions offered him solace. Each word they wrote inspired a growing sense of autonomy and mutual respect, qualities he believed would strengthen their bond. As they delved deeper into their stories, Greg stumbled upon a buried desire he had long ignored, to sketch out a vision not just for a family legacy, but for himself, one that aligned with his passions rather than conforming to inherited expectations. In this exploration, unseen layers of resilience began to surface, pushing him to confront his past choices. One evening, after wrapping up a particularly revealing session, Lisa casually remarked, "You're really evolving. It's inspiring to see you embrace this." His heart leaped. "And you are too, it's like I'm watching you shed old skin." Yet, as the praise settled, a nagging thought clouded his optimism. Was this transformation sustained, or would they revert to their old selves when faced with resistance? The future loomed enticing yet uncertain. This burgeoning journey shifted into a deeper conflict as whispers of doubt collided with the momentum of their partnership. Just then, Lisa's phone buzzed, drawing her attention toward its glow, a message from someone unexpected. Greg's heart raced. Who could it be? Amid their fragile growth, would an outside influence disrupt their momentum? As Lisa's brow furrowed over the screen, the tension shifted, becoming palpable. Was this the challenge that would test the foundation they were trying to build? The air thickened with anticipation, and Greg realized that their path forward might face more than internal challenges. Just outside lay a world that would inevitably confront their budding transformation. "Who is it?" he asked, anxiety threading through his voice. The moment held an edge, the sharpness of uncertainty hovering between them. Would they emerge focused and unified, or falter under the weight of external pressure? Lisa's gaze remained glued to her phone, her face a canvas of conflicting emotions. Greg felt the dread unfurl in his chest like darkened smoke, encroaching upon the fragile sanctuary they had built. "What does it say?" he pressed, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. He was acutely aware that each moment stretched thin with tension. Finally, she glanced up, her expression shifting to one of measured resolve rather than panic. "It's from Sarah," she replied quietly. Greg's stomach twisted at the mention of their daughter, always an unpredictable force in the family dynamics. "What does she want?" he asked, wary. "She's disappointed that we haven't included her in what we've been working on," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the turbulent undercurrent. "She feels like we're leaving her out of a journey she wants to be a part of." The realization weighed heavily on him. Greg understood Sarah's desires for connection, yet this wasn't merely a familial project. It felt like venturing into uncharted territory, a place where profound self-discovery was at stake. "Do you think she really understands what this means for us?" Greg asked, searching Lisa's face for clarity, for a glimpse of shared understanding. "She wants to participate, Greg." "Perhaps we should talk to her," Lisa suggested, tilting her head, her eyes softening. "This process might be even more rewarding if we include her." For a moment, Greg wrestled with the thought of externalizing their journey. The idea of involving Sarah introduced another layer of complexity he hadn't accounted for, a balancing act between personal exploration and familial connection. "What if it complicates things?" he finally voiced. "What if this becomes about her, and we lose our focus?" Lisa reached for his hand, her touch igniting a current of shared purpose. "Wouldn't that challenge us to redefine our goals in healthier ways? We could initiate an open dialogue about our fears and aspirations as a family. Much of our writing is about vulnerability, maybe we should model that for her." Her perspective, calm and assured, fueled a flicker of determination within him. But could he truly trust that additional emotional exposure wouldn't derail their progress? Yes, but he stuttered, grappling with unease. What if it overwhelms her, or worse, us? Communication is key, Lisa reassured him. This journey is about confronting our truths, right? Why not allow her to be part of that exploration? As uncertainty continued to swirl in his mind, Greg began to recognize the opportunity that lay hidden in that chaos. Could confronting fears in an open context, not shielded from family, deepen their shared narrative? The thought collided with his earlier fears, flickering a glimmer of hope. We'll need to set boundaries, he conceded, his voice gaining strength. If we're to involve Sarah, she must understand this isn't merely about her talents or expectations. It's a step toward understanding ourselves. Lisa nodded, relief washing across her features. Agreed. We can establish guidelines for our discussions, ensuring everyone's voice is respected. The prospect of this conversation loomed daunting, yet Greg recognized the personal growth it could trigger not only for Sarah but for himself and Lisa, too. The potential for deeper connections empowered him, overshadowing his doubts. Emboldened, he suggested, how about we gather as a family this weekend? We can discuss life and growth, open the door for her input on our narratives while embracing her own. Lisa smiled, her eyes dancing with newfound enthusiasm. Yes. That sounds perfect. Yet, despite the budding excitement, Greg felt the shadows of fear crawl back into his thoughts. Would the discussion spiral out of control? Would they break through barriers or create rifts too deep to mend? The plan took shape, but Greg sensed misgivings echoing within himself. As he watched Lisa's eyes light up, a glimmer of doubt flared inside him again. Was he prepared for this? Was he strong enough to publicly face his vulnerabilities alongside his daughter? With the impending family meeting, he couldn't shake the sensation that it would not only reveal deeper truths among them, but also unearth more of his insecurities. As the structure of their plan solidified, he was struck by an unsettling realization. This weekend might not just be an opportunity for growth, it might also expose the very fault lines in their family bond that he had hoped would remain hidden. What new truths and challenges awaited them, and would Greg be able to stand firm when they emerged? The days leading to the family meeting felt like a suffocating fog coiling around Greg's mind. Each hour stretched long as he wrestled with mounting anxiety. What had once been a glimmer of possibility now seemed to bubble with uncertainty, and he found himself pacing through the abyss of his thoughts, his heart echoing with questions that had no immediate answers. On the morning of their gathering, the tension was palpable. Greg stood at the kitchen counter, unyielding in the face of his inner turmoil. He mumbled tasks to himself: coffee, pastries, and preparing the living room for their discussion. As he brewed the coffee, the familiar smell calmed him slightly, providing a temporary refuge from his spiraling thoughts. But as he set the table, he couldn't shake the sensation that he was drawing battle lines, not just for the upcoming conversation but within himself. Could he maintain focus on their collective goals without losing himself in this emotional labyrinth? The door swung open, and Sarah shimmered into the room, her youthful excitement clashing with his unease. "Hey, Dad. What is going on?" she chirped, joy lighting up her face. Her innocent enthusiasm felt like a stark contrast to the whirlwind brewing inside him. "Just getting ready for our family meeting," he replied, forcing a smile that faltered slightly. "You know, the chat about everything we've been working on. Can't wait. I've been writing a little myself. I think it could fit in with what you two are doing," she said, her eyes sparkling with ambition. At that moment, Greg felt a swell of pride mixed with trepidation. And yet, what lurked beneath was a yearning to protect his own creative sanctuary, a place he hadn't fully acknowledged to himself in years. Lisa entered soon after, her presence igniting a sense of purpose in the room. "Is everyone excited?" she asked, carefully noting the atmosphere. The warm gaze she offered Greg momentarily softened the turbulent waves of anxiety that thrummed within him. A few minutes later, they gathered in the living room, the energy charged with possibilities and apprehensions. Greg positioned himself in a way that allowed him to subtly evaluate both Lisa and Sarah, absorbing their reactions. As the conversation began, he sensed a burgeoning responsibility settle on his shoulders, a role of mediator as well as a participant in discovering their truths. Lisa broke the ice, initiating a discussion about vulnerability. "Let us share what this journey means to each of us," she suggested, her tone soothing. Sarah's voice rose with eagerness as she expressed her desire to contribute meaningfully to the family's narrative. But as they spoke, Greg's uncertainty resurfaced. Every time Sarah shared her aspirations, the mixed calls for inclusion filled him with a paralyzing sense of contradiction, his desire to nurture her growth against the instinct to safeguard his own creative territory. Would he be able to let his guard down enough to embrace the wisdom her youthful insights could bring? As the dialogue deepened, unsolicited thoughts crept in, reminiscent of past fears that had wrestled him into silence. Was he capable of bearing witness to this family evolution without succumbing to old insecurities? He could sense the weight of the conversation pressing against his capacity to remain grounded. In a moment of clarity amidst the haze, Greg took a deep breath and decided he could no longer afford to hold back. "I want to participate too," he spoke, a new strength threading through his voice. "But I have to admit sometimes, I'm scared of what this means for me and for us." Sarah's eyes widened with empathy, visibly startled by his admission. In that shared space of vulnerability, a silence enveloped them, a potent understanding simmered just below the surface. As they continued delving into each other's hopes and fears, Greg felt the beginning of a transformation, not just in their relationship but within himself. A realization started taking root: embracing the complexities of their connections might be the real journey he needed to undertake. Just as he began to feel solid ground beneath his feet, Sarah leaned forward. "And what if we unravel something we can't handle?" she asked, vulnerability mirrored in her expression. Greg was suddenly reminded that the shingles didn't merely lie with them as individuals, they rested within the very bond they shared. The possibilities began to swirl again, teasing with uncertain edges. What part of their destinies still lay undiscovered, lurking beyond the horizon of their consciousness? As he met Lisa's gaze, a quiet challenge ignited between them. This was not just about revealing truths, but perhaps about confronting the deeper shadows they all carried. Would that confrontation strengthen the bonds they cherished, or expose fault lines they had carefully covered? The ominous tension settled in the air anew, the uncharted paths they faced standing before them, beckoning. Would Greg find the strength to navigate through the unexpected revelations ahead? In the stillness after Sarah's question, the air thickened, wrapping around Greg like a shroud. Each passing second felt like a ripple disturbing the surface of a deep pool, drawing him closer to the unknown. He exchanged glances with Lisa, whose own eyes reflected the weight of their unspoken fears. The prospect of revealing untold truths loomed before him like a gaping chasm. "Let us not shy away from what that might look like," Lisa offered, her calm demeanor both a balm and a catalyst. "What if we shared not just our goals, but our fears too?" The suggestion hung, charged with intensity. Greg clenched his fists, the call for vulnerability striking him as both a lifeline and an anchor. Should he dive deeper into this fragile territory? If he spoke his truth, there was no escaping the crossing of invisible boundaries that had kept them all comfortable yet stagnant. He took another steadying breath. "I've been trying to protect us, to shield us from what I fear could be chaos," he admitted, his voice a measured tremor betraying his resolve. "But maybe chaos is part of the journey." The silence that followed felt less intimidating, as if Greg's admission had begotten an understanding that traversed both voice and silence. Sarah began to nod slowly, her youthful face alight with recognition, while Lisa's brow furrowed in contemplative contemplation. "I get it," Sarah said. "Sometimes I hold back too, thinking it'll help if I don't rock the boat. What if we decide to embrace the chaos together?" Greg proposed, a newfound determination igniting within him. "Maybe our true strength lies not in avoiding discomfort but in facing it head-on." He watched as a flicker of anticipation crossed Sarah's features. In that moment, something shifted within Greg, as if scaffolding had fallen, revealing a core that had long been hidden. The notion of confronting chaos ignited a light in him, a spark of potential he hadn't recognized before. Lisa leaned in closer. "What do you think will happen if we do push these boundaries?" Greg weighed the ramifications, his internal landscape shifting tumultuously. He pictured the threads of their familial fabric unraveling, but also reassured himself that, with unraveling, new patterns could emerge. We might find new strengths. The possibility of understanding each other at a level we haven't dared yet, he responded, his voice gaining momentum. Sarah's eyes sparkled with fervor as she leaned back, absorbing his words. What if we started with small things? Like sharing our biggest dreams? Greg felt a swell of pride at her suggestion. It was a seed, one that held promise. And our biggest fears, with the understanding that we're in this together? He added, feeling an unfamiliar but relieving weight lift off his shoulders. Their discussion expanded, a remarkable alchemy in the air. As they shared snippets of their dreams, Greg felt a reciprocal bravery building among them. The vulnerabilities they uncovered intertwined with aspirations, creating an intricate tapestry of hope. However, deeper conversations birthed doubts within him. The unease of truth turned intrusive, demanding attention. He contemplated the darker shadows lurking behind their emerging dialogue. Would they truly be able to confront these when push came to shove? As layered revelations flowed between them, a profound understanding of the stakes started to unfurl. But did he possess the fortitude to champion this new path, one threaded with potential pain as much as it was with healing? What if we find out that our truths aren't what we expected? Sarah dared to whisper, drawing Greg from his thoughts. Her innocent inquiry echoed the tremors inside him. What if they stumbled upon dark truths that could fracture their bond instead of strengthening it? Just as doubt threatened to anchor him back into familiar territory, a fierce need for growth surged within him. Greg locked eyes with Lisa, recognizing that their journey might finally be leading them to an authentic understanding of one another, albeit one that shimmered tantalizingly close, yet dangerously uncertain. Then we'll face those truths together, he resolved, feeling the gravity of his own words. But as he spoke, Greg felt the nagging internal tremor return. What lay ahead, a transformation or disintegration? He was acutely aware that the next step could forge them into something entirely different, perhaps one that they hadn't prepared for. Just as he began to feel the intensity of their connection igniting, the doorbell rang, a sharp interruption, ushering in the unpredictable once more. Who or what awaited on the other side? The door creaked open, and the moment held its breath. Greg's heart raced, caught between anticipation and dread. The unexpected visitor, an old friend Mark, stood on the other side, his expressions darkened by the shadows outside. A wave of unease washed over Greg as he absorbed Mark's battered demeanor. Something felt amiss. Greg. Sorry to spring this on you, Mark stammered, his voice laced with urgency. I need to talk. It's about everything. Lisa raised an eyebrow, assessing Mark with a smoldering curiosity that mirrored Greg's own. He was all too aware of the complexities that lay tangled in Mark's life: professional setbacks, emotional turmoil. But this wasn't just a social call, Greg sensed it. Come in, Greg managed, stepping aside to let Mark in. As Mark crossed the threshold, the air shifted, laden with an unsaid weight. Greg's family felt the tension too. He could see it in their shared glances, their uncertain expressions feeding his internal conflict. He knew they were all on the brink of transformation or perhaps disaster, yet here was this new variable thrown into the mix. What is going on? Lisa ventured, her tone both inviting and probing as they settled into the living room. Mark sank into the couch, rubbing his temples as if trying to dispel some unseen pressure. I've been thinking a lot about what you guys were discussing earlier about chaos and truth. I think I'm about to hit a breaking point. The transparency in Mark's confession bore an ironic reflection of Greg's own inner dialogue moments prior. Mark's vulnerability acted like a mirror, reflecting fears Greg had for himself and his family. Suddenly, the boundaries he had so carefully erected began to feel flimsy and futile. Sometimes it feels like we're sprouting roots in the wrong soil, Mark continued, his voice low, a man unearthing buried fears. I'm scared that if I open up, I'll lose everything. Greg's mind raced, a parallel understanding brewing. Mark's admission echoed the very essence of their earlier discussion. To reveal their truths was a risk, yet perhaps the chaos that ensued could lead to the growth they all desperately sought. Maybe facing the truth is the only way to reclaim your life, Greg replied slowly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. The realization dawned on him he was not just a passive participant in this moment, he was a catalyst. Mark's eyes flickered, contemplating the idea. What if facing it doesn't lead to growth but just ruin? A question that struck like a match in dry grass. The air crackled with unspoken dread as Greg considered the potential consequences of their fears. He had never fully embraced this kind of confrontation before, always veering toward comfort and safety. But it was clear that everyone, including himself, stood at a fork in the road. Lisa leaned forward, her voice firm yet gentle. But what if the ruin is a necessary step to something greater? Think about it. If you don't confront your fears, they just fester and grow? The slight nods in the room signaled a burgeoning understanding. Each of them, including Greg, simmered with their separate apprehensions, but more than that, they ignited a collective hope for something larger than their fears alone. Greg felt a swell of gratitude for this unexpected interruption that pressed against the limitations of their previous conversation. Mark, what do you really want? He found himself asking. What's beneath the chaos you're afraid of? What are you trying to protect yourself from? And with that query, a spark ignited in Mark's eyes. I want to be free, Greg. Free from this paralyzing fear of failure. Freed from the weight of their earlier boundaries, the group began a raw exploration of their vulnerabilities and dreams. As Greg shared snippets of his own misgivings, fears he had buried for so long, he felt the collective wall of silence begin to crumble around them. Outside, the weather shifted, the wind intensifying, a physical reminder of the turmoil they were embracing together. Tuned to the rhythm of honest revelations, Greg's heart raced, envisioning a path forward that promised better understanding if they could gather the courage to walk it. Just as he began to feel the momentum of their discussion gathering steam, a thunderclap echoed, signaling that true storms often lead to unforeseen transformations. Together, they were peering into the abyss of chaos that might either engulf them or set them free. What came next would test their newfound resolve. Would they be able to hold on to this freedom when the next thunder rolled in? The days following that fateful meeting hung suspended in uncertainty, each moment tinged with both trepidation and expectancy. Greg had reached a precipice, and while he felt liberation in confronting his fears, the enormity of the unknown pressed closely, whispering doubts into his mind. Each morning he awakened to the lingering residue of their discussions, the vulnerability unveiled, the raw truths shared, but with that awakening came an awareness that transforming oneself was not an easy path. After evening dinners became a potpourri of family brainstorming sessions about their writing, he felt the dynamics within them shift. Greg took to documenting his ideas, sketching out a collective narrative that intertwined his ambitions with the voices of Lisa and Sarah. It was exhilarating and daunting. He worried constantly whether they could maintain this collaborative momentum without reverting to old habits or fears. One rainy evening, while the raindrops drummed against the window, Greg noticed the way Lisa and Sarah had sprawled comfortably on the couch, lost in the act of writing. There it was, a genuine lightheartedness dancing between them, unearthing laughter out of shared aspirations. In that moment, something clicked within him, a realization that their collective strength lay not just in their individual contributions but in the very act of supporting each other through the storm. Hey, he ventured, his voice breaking the intensity of their concentration. What if we took our narratives and turned them into regular discussions? Every week, we could share our progress, our obstacles. Make it a real commitment. Lisa looked up, a spark of inspiration igniting in her eyes. Absolutely. It'll keep us accountable, and we can celebrate the small victories together. Moreover, it was clear that these shared goals had transformed their relationships. Greg felt a profound sense of gratitude. Accountability meant uncovering shadows not just through their writings but by unlocking deeper conversations that had long been dormant. It was a promise of a united front, portraying each dilemma as a stepping stone toward clearer understanding rather than a division. As weeks passed, they established a rhythm. Their family discussions often evoked the involvement of Mark, who had found solace in their collaborative process. He opened up about his aspirations, echoing the transformation that Greg had seen pulling through the layers of his own life. It turned out that vulnerability did indeed invite growth. One crisp morning, as they sat around the kitchen table, Greg observed the dynamic among them morph into a supportive nest of creativity. Sarah animatedly spoke about her vision for a chapter, while Lisa provided gentle critiques that encouraged rather than discouraged. In those moments, Greg discovered newfound confidence in their collective potential. Though his past fears still whispered occasionally, he now held them reconciled in a dialogue of growth, their dreams intertwining in harmonious chaos. "Dad, this idea of encompassing our stories is great," Sarah exclaimed, "but what do we do with the parts that scare us?" A profound silence draped the space as realization settled on him, an understanding that what unsettled them was merely a reflection of uncharted territories lying ahead. "Remember, the more we confront those shadows, the more light we shine on our paths. We can view those fears not as hindrances but as fuel for our evolution." He saw the resolve solidify in their eyes. They were all traversing the same tumultuous sea, empowered by transparency. In the following months, something incredible unfolded before him. Their book, initially a collection of narratives, had morphed into a vibrant exploration of identity, family dynamics, and the value of courageous vulnerability. Each chapter showcased communal struggles and triumphs, reflecting both the joyous moments and painful truths they dared to voice. They had conquered the chaos, a raw honesty seeping through each word, evolving not just as individuals but as a family unified in purpose. Feedback began to trickle back from readers, colleagues, and their community. Positive reviews flowed into his inbox, affirming their collective work as authentic and profound. The validation was tangible. They were being recognized not just for writing, but for their courage in addressing challenges that were often dismissed. Greg's pride swelled not in self-glorification but in the profound realization that he had helped stitch together a narrative that crafted their family's collective identity into something beautiful, something brave. The day finally came for their book launch. As Greg stood at the front, flanked by Lisa and Sarah, he absorbed the sea of supportive faces gathered in the room. This moment was not merely about the culmination of their efforts, it was an emblem of change, his transition from merely adhering to tradition to actively reshaping it. The journey had transformed him from the protector of family traditions into a co-architect of their narrative, one that celebrated growth and authenticity rather than stagnation. "Thank you for being here," he began, his voice steady yet infused with gratitude. "Today we celebrate not just a book but a journey we've undertaken together, embracing growth, confronting chaos, and, above all, recognizing our strength and vulnerability. Each of you has played a part in shaping our story." As the applause broke and surged around him, Greg felt an overwhelming flush of accomplishment wash over him. He realized it was not merely the praise from the audience, it was the profound path he and his family had traveled together. They had wrestled with vulnerability, dismantled old structures, and forged connections that screamed of acceptance and understanding. This was the moment he had long sought, an authentic transformation that allowed each family member to shine and redefine not just who they were as individuals but who they could become together. As the launch continued, Greg paused to lock eyes with Lisa, whose radiant smile conveyed a depth of gratitude and shared pride. It was clear they had found a way to nurture each other's ambitions without sacrificing their familial ties. They had ignited a transformative spark, demonstrating the potency of embrace through personal growth. This pinnacle of accomplishment would remain etched in his mind, a crystallization of their journey, the embrace of vulnerability, and an unshakable belief that they were capable of mastering not just their individual paths but also the collective story they constructed together. As he stepped away from the podium into the back room, Greg felt a cool breeze sweep through the air, heavy with hints of possibility. This was just the beginning. Fueled by recognition from the journey they'd taken, he understood that the quest for growth, authenticity, and connection was always ongoing. They would write more chapters, continue to embrace challenges, and reshape their family narrative infinitely. As they gathered debris after the event, he faced the threshold of their shared future, a path brightly lit by individuality and empowering connection. Here was the freedom to pursue what mattered most, unencumbered by expectations, a resounding testament to the transformative power held within the chaos of dreams. For those of you who are captivated by the journey of personal transformation, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and propel these empowering stories into the world. Comment below to share your thoughts, reactions, or theories about the journey we just traversed together. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us keep the momentum of resilience alive.